This is a video about taking a rough wood blank and making it round on the wood lathe. I'm going to show you several different techniques and tools you can use to make it easier for you. Thank you for watching today. As woodturners, we've all fallen back on just grabbing our spindle roughing gouge and using it almost exclusively to rough a piece of wood to round. But that's not always the way we have to do it. As we all know, there's more than one way to separate a feline from his dermis. So in this video, I'm going to show you some beginner and advanced techniques that you can use in different situations. And hopefully what that's going to do for you is save you time and make things easier. Now, I haven't been on YouTube for a while, so if you want to, stick around and I'll show you a project that I've completed recently. I'm pretty excited about it. I'm Jason Geyser, and this is Geyser Woodturner. Let's learn some wood-turning roughing techniques. So the first thing I'd like to show you is how to use a spindle roughing gouge on a round piece of wood. And hopefully that'll translate over to when we rough the corners on a square piece of wood. So the most important thing to remember is that we have this bevel. It's about a 45-degree angle, and we want to rest that bevel or ride the bevel on the piece of wood. And we'll rest it on the tool rest, and then we can adjust the handle up and down to control our cut. Let me show you what that looks like with the lathe on. So I'll rest it on there, I'll raise the handle, and I get a cut. And then when I drop the handle, I get no cut. So I have cut, no cut, cut, no cut. And then I can set that angle and move it across and get the depth of cut that I want. So when we translate this to a square piece of wood, I just want to take this corner off, and I want to take it off a little bit at a time until it's round. So I'll put the spindle roughing gouge up there in the same angle that I had it when it was round. I'll lift the handle until I get a cut, and I'll slide that across, and I'll take off a little bit at a time. One pass at a time will do it. So I'll start in one corner, and I'll work my way towards the middle, and just take off a pass at a time. When I get closer to the other side, it's parallel, so I can go the other direction. And when you're doing this, you always want to work from the highest point to the lowest point. And the reason you do that is because the grain is running along the piece of wood, and if you go uphill and against the grain, it's going to want to take big chunks, and that can be dangerous. And you'll just keep taking small passes until you get it almost to round. And one way that you can tell if it's round is you can rest the chisel on top of the piece of wood, and if it bounces, then you know you're not completely round. You can also feel it with your fingers. I can tell this one just needs a few more passes and it'll be ready. Just to give you an idea of how this works from another angle, this is a top-down view. And you can see me as I take passes. I'm going to start on one side and just take a little bit at a time and work my way over to the other side. And then I'll be able to go the other direction, work my way down to parallel again. And as I'm doing this, I'm always going from the highest to the lowest point, or the biggest diameter to the smallest diameter. That way I'm not ever going against the grain, and it works out well that way, and you can be really safe. And that one is round now. Alright, the next technique I'd like to show you has nothing to do with a spindle roughing gouge. In fact, you don't want to use a spindle roughing gouge in this situation. It's not designed to be used with a bowl blank. So we're going to mount a bowl blank onto a screw chuck, and this one's been rounded with a bandsaw already, so it gets us started. And you don't have to do that. It just takes a little bit more time if you don't do that. Now we're going to use a bowl gouge, and this is a tool that's designed for roughing a bowl. And it has a deep flute on it that helps clear away chips. And then this one has a 1/2-inch bar that goes all the way into the handle. It makes this tool really tough and takes a lot of blunt force. It's got a smaller tip and ground back wings, and that helps us take a little bit less material at a time, and still gives us a bevel to ride on. So what we're going to want to do on this bowl is we're going to want to go right across the face and make it into a cylinder again. And you'll notice on this piece of wood we'll have an area of end grain, side grain, and end grain. And you're always going to be battling that with a bowl. And that's why you want this sharp tip, and you want to present the tool in the proper way so that you can be cutting both of those. All right, so the first thing I want to do is spin this piece and make sure that nothing's going to hit the tool rest and that everything's locked down. Then I'll bring up the tailstock for support and get that set. And then I'm going to want to come across the face of this first, and then we'll work on the back side. And the way that we're going to present the tool when the lathe is on is we'll have the handle down so that we can ride that bevel just like we had done before. And we're going to want to tip that flute just a little bit to the side. If you think of a clock, you're probably going to want about the 10 o'clock position as you come across. And make sure that that bevel's pointed in the direction that you want to go. So as we come across, we'll do that. And you can control the depth of cut by the angle that you have the handle at. And sometimes this just takes a little bit of muscle memory. And so as we come across, we don't want to come all the way out the end because we're going to split fibers on the wood. So I'll stop, and I'll turn the tool around, and we'll point the bevel more towards the 2 o'clock position and come the other direction. And we'll just keep working our way down, taking little bits at a time until we have this piece round on the end. We'll just keep working it. Like I said, little bites makes all the difference. So it doesn't take long, and all we need to do is make a few passes, and we'll get that to where it's a cylinder on the outside. And everything is completely round. And you can see that we don't have any flat spots anymore. And the next thing we need to do is come around from the back face and take these corners off and make that nice bowl shape. So I'm going to tip the tool rest at about a 45-degree angle to that last face, and then I'll present the tool in much the same way that I did before. We'll have it at about that, the flute over at about that 10 o'clock position, and then we'll take a little bit at a time. We'll set our angle, and we'll take those corners off as we come across. And you don't need to worry about rounding it yet because we're just roughing, we're just taking off material. So one thing you can do is just take a 45-degree angle and just make a straight cut across. And we want to be looking up top so that we can see where we're cutting. That's always a good idea to do when you're wood turning. Not actually look at the tool, but look on top so that you can see the shape that you're making. Okay, and we'll stop it and take a look, and it looks like we're doing really well there. There's a couple of different cuts you can take at this point. You can either, and it's basically the same angle, but one of them you push like we have been doing, and it's called a push cut, where you lead with the tip of the tool. Or there's also one called a pull cut, where you can turn the tool around and cut more on the wing, but you want to keep it up by that tip. You don't want that wing to catch and move into the piece of wood. So you can see as we come around, we just take off that 45, and then as we go, we can start to get more of that bowl shape, and you just kind of blend it in. And as you take more and more cuts, you start to round a little bit more and a little bit more. On these two passes you can see an example. This one is more of a pull cut where I'm leading the tool from the handle and cutting on the wing all the way across. And then on this next pass I'm going to start that with more of a pull cut, and then as I get to about the middle I rotate that tool around and I start pushing with the tip of the tool into a push cut. And that's just to illustrate kind of the difference between those two cuts. And then we can just start to blend those edges in and start to get more of a round bowl shape. And that's how you use a bowl gouge to rough. The next technique I want to show you is a little bit more advanced. We're going to be using a skew chisel for this. Now on my skew chisel, I've rounded the profile. It's not just straight across, and that helps a little bit for clearance while you're doing this cut. It's called a peeling cut. And the way that we're going to do this is we're going to rest that bevel on the piece of wood, and then we'll raise the handle and plunge that tip into the piece of wood towards the center. And it's just going to peel away the material. And just like this, we'll plunge it towards the center, and you can see the shavings that come off. It just peels that wood away. We'll come down and do a little bit more, and you work your way across the piece of wood. Now this technique has saved me tons and tons of time because it's a little bit quicker of a roughing technique. And the same on a square piece of wood. We're going to ride that bevel and then plunge it into the piece of wood. And I'll show you what that looks like with the lathe on. So we'll bring that bevel in the same memory that we had before and just plunge that tip of the skew chisel down to where we have a dowel on the end. Just like that. Now just to show you just how fast this cut can go, I'm not going to speed up this video, and we're going to do this peeling cut all the way across our piece. And it takes no time at all. And we're already round. As a preview to our next technique, we're going to use what's called a planing cut to smooth this piece out. And what you basically do is you rest the bevel of the skew chisel on the piece of wood, raise the handle till you get a cut, and you want that cut to be down towards the heel of the skew chisel, and you move it across. You can get some really smooth cuts this way. And this is something that you're going to want to practice often before you do our next technique, because it's a little bit more advanced. So you're going to need the muscle memory that you get from this cut. This technique is probably one of the most advanced that I've shown you today. And it's basically using that planing cut and floating across the corners. So the angle that you have the tool at is very important, and it's very important to have that muscle memory of a planing cut. You'll float it across the corners. I'm not even sure if this cut has a name, but I like to call it the floating planing cut. And you can see that it removes a lot of material very quickly. In fact, some of those chunks coming off of there can be some pretty rough splinters, so be careful as you perform this cut. Now, the first time I saw this cut was by Nick Cook at the Utah Woodturning Symposium. And I was really amazed and my jaw hit the floor because I didn't realize that you could even use this cut, that it was even possible. And Nick did this so that you could use remove a lot of material quickly, and you could use the same tool to finish and shape the piece of wood. And he did probably like 10 projects in an hour. And so if you want to really save a lot of time, practice this, but be careful because it does remove a lot of material quickly, and there is a good chance that you could have a catch. But there we have a nice round piece of wood. So I've just shown you 4 different techniques that you can use with each tool to rough a piece of wood to round on a wood lathe. Now the reason I wanted to show you this is because as wood turners, we try lots of different projects and each situation can be unique. So as we put techniques into practice, we have something to fall back on in each unique situation. And I hope that as you put these into practice, it will make your turning quicker and easier. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. If you like this video or want to subscribe, you know what to do. So I promised you that I'd show you a project that I've been working on at the end of the video, so here it is. So this is a hollow form or vase that I've been working on, and the bottom of it is Pacific Madrone, and then this spindle is apricot on the top. And I've been thinking a lot about vases and vessels when I started making this, and I looked up the root of the word, and it basically means something that carries something else. And a vessel can even mean a person. And when I thought about that, I thought about what do I want to put in my vessel? You know, because you can open it up and put things in a vessel. So I was thinking a lot about that, and I thought one of the things I'd like to put in my vessel, and I think it's especially relevant at this time, is that I wanted to put kindness in my vessel. And this piece is reflective of that. This piece is called kindness. I don't know if you can see that there. Like I said, I will get some better pictures here for you. This one is from an experience that I had in Alaska, and I was outside in the rain on a boat and everyone else was inside, and there was a whale, a humpback whale, that breached right off the side of the boat. And since I was out in the rain, I was one of the lucky few that got to see it up close and personal. And humpback whales are one of the most altruistic animals that live in the animal kingdom. They will actually save other animals and even people from predators. And so when I think about kindness, I think about a humpback whale. And so hopefully I can show you some of the techniques that I've used in this vessel in other videos. So thanks for sticking around, and enjoy the pictures at the end here.